So as if the fact that H. Scott Motorsports is folding up and no longer going to be fielding for what it seems, the 15 formerly driven by Clint Bowyer, the 46 formerly driven by Michael Annett, with Bowyer moving over to Stewart-Haas Racing for 2017, Annett moving to Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series for 2017. Now Clint Bowyer is suing H. Scott Motorsports. From jski.com, and I quote, "One day after finishing a frustrating season with H. Scott Motorsports, Clint Bowyer sued the team for $2.223 million, alleging it missed 2 monthly payments and a commission for bringing sponsorship to the team," which of course would be the sponsorship of 5 Hour Energy. Actually, no, 5 sponsors: 5 Hour Energy, Maxwell House, Peak, Visine, and AAA Insurance. Apparently, Scott owed money to Bowyer October 20th and November 20th for a total of $1.2 million, and then $1 million bonus for the sponsorship of those 5 sponsors that I just mentioned. According to H. Scott Motorsports spokesman Ramsey Poston, quotes, "We are aware of the lawsuit. Obviously, we won't speak about the details of the suit, but I can say that overall it's frivolous and capricious." Isn't that usually how it is with money? It's usually frivolous and capricious, and yeah. Well, anyway, it will make its way to court, apparently, so yay for getting along and all that stuff. It's money. It's money. Anyway, let's talk about Clint Bowyer a little bit here. Clint Bowyer moving over to Stewart-Haas Racing, replacing the retiring Tony Stewart. Clint Bowyer, for the first time in his career, actually, will be driving a Ford, as Stewart-Haas Racing announcing they're moving over to Ford Fusions for the 2017 seasons, which means we'll see Kurt Busch back in a Ford, Kevin Harvick will be in a Ford, and Danica Patrick will be in a Ford. And to my knowledge, I believe the only one that's really even familiar with Fords is Kurt Busch, back when he was with Roush Fenway Racing, then Roush Racing. And he actually won a championship with the team when they were with Fords in 2004. Or was it? Yeah, it was 2004. I was second guessing myself there. So, and there was also a lot of that whole talk about Kevin Harvick possibly going over to Hendrick Motorsports, replacing Casey Kane because he didn't want to drive a Ford Fusion. Well, all that's basically died down, and Harvick's going to be in a Ford next year. But as I've looked, as I mentioned, Harvick, to my knowledge, has never been in a Ford. Danica Patrick's never been in a Ford because obviously she's been in a Chevy since starting with Stewart-Haas Racing, and the only one that's been in a Ford is Kurt Busch. Clint Bowyer has also never been in a Ford Fusion. He ran Chevrolet when he ran with Richard Childress Racing from 2006 to 2011, Toyota with Michael Waltrip Racing from 2012 to 2015, and then obviously a Chevrolet last year when he drove for H. Scott Motorsports. And I was actually looking back through Clint Bowyer's seasons as well. It amazes me how the years go by. It's been since 2006 that he's been in a team. And I'm looking here at Clint Bowyer as far as how his seasons have started. And for the most part, when it comes to the Daytona 500, his seasons haven't gotten off to that bad a start. Back in 2006, his first start in the 500, he started 37th. He managed to finish 6th. Now, I understand this is all based off the fact that it was at a super speedway. Finished 18th in 2007, 24th in 2008. Back-to-back 4th place finishes for 2009, 2010, 2011. His final year with Richard Childress Racing, he finished 17th. Finished 11th his first 2 seasons with Michael Waltrip Racing in 12 and 13. Finished 42nd in 2014. 7th place in 2015, and then with H. Scott Motorsports finished in 33rd. That was maybe one of the worst performances of the season at super speedways for Clint Bowyer. The other races that I recall, he actually was up there close to the front of the field. Actually, I don't remember exactly what his complete finishes were. I could actually look at that and find out. Let's see. At Talladega, the first Talladega race, he finished in 7th. At Daytona, the second Daytona race, he finished ninth, and at the second Talladega race, he finished 18th. So case in point, 33rd, 7th, ninth, and 18th. As I look here through the seasons that he ran for those teams as far as points are concerned, drink in a couple of these numbers. His first full-time season, he finished 17th in the points. Then he finished 3rd. Then he finished 5th. Then it was 15th, 10th, and 13th. Those were with Richard Childress Racing. Then it was 2nd overall in the points. That was his first year with Michael Waltrip Racing in 2012. 7th, and then 19th and 16th with Michael Waltrip Racing. And then last season, let's be honest, it was maybe one of the top 5 worst teams out there as far as fielding for cars. And Clint Bowyer managed to finish 27th in the point standings with that Chevrolet out of H. Scott Motorsports. I can't tell you how many times I would look at the qualifying results for races, and both he and Michael Annett, the 15 and the 46, were down in the bottom 5, 6, 7. Bowyer really worked his butt off to get that team 27th in the point standings. If I can actually really quickly look, I'm probably not going to be able to bring it up very quickly in time. Well, actually, maybe I might be able to. Hold on. Yes, actually, I can. So Clint Bowyer, let's see some of the names that he might have outdone. All right, let's see. He outdid Casey Mears, Landon Castle, Michael McDowell, Brian Scott, David Reagan, Regan Smith, Matt DiBenedetto. I mean, these are drivers right here that I just named off that, let's be honest, had as good, if not better, equipment than H. Scott Motorsports did. I mean, Casey Mears had Richard Childress Racing. Landon Castle had the Roush Yates engines. We know that the team is competitive. I mean, for heaven's sakes, they've got, what, 2 victories now? Those from Motorsports, one with David Reagan back at Talladega, and then one, of course, this season with Chris Buescher at Pocono. Michael McDowell, we know that team gets Richard Childress Racing equipment. Brian Scott with Richard Petty Motorsports. David Reagan. BK Racing, maybe not better, but on par with H. Scott Motorsports. So, the fact that Clint Bowyer, with the equipment he had, was able to finish out the season 27th in the points, and actually had 3 top 10s with that ride as well. 2 of them, as I stated before, at the restrictor plate track, 7th at Dega and 9th at Daytona. I mean, that, I think, in itself, is pretty impressive. Just to put it into perspective, 3 top 10s. There were a couple of other drivers that had 3 top 10s as well, and no top 5s. Well, actually, I should say there's one other driver, because there was one driver that did have 3 top 10s but did have a top 5. But Paul Menard. Paul Menard in the 27. So to have a season pretty similar to Paul Menard in the equipment that Clint Bowyer was in, compared to the equipment that Paul Menard was in, that is pretty doggone good. So, what's Clint Bowyer going to do when he moves over to Stewart-Haas Racing in the 14 car? Are we going to be able to see Clint Bowyer get back to the kind of caliber of racing that we normally see? Well, part of me would like to say yes, because we know that Clint Bowyer obviously hasn't lost it if he's been able to take a crappy team like he was in 2016 and get it to finish where it did. The question I would have is, has it taken some of the heart out of Clint Bowyer? I don't know. I mean, let's face it, 2015, 2016 were probably 2 of the worst years for Clint Bowyer, especially with the fact of the whole issue that was going on with, you know, the possible folding up of Michael Waltrip Racing. There was all that turmoil going on there, and then he moves to H. Scott Motorsports. it just wasn't a good 2 seasons for Clint Bowyer. And now he's going to be putting in a solid ride. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to affect him mentally in the fact that he's had those 2 seasons. If he's going to be able to get back to the same kind of caliber that he was in back in 2012, 2013. Obviously, I would hope so. But again, he's never driven a Ford Fusion. It's going to be another learning curve for him. But I think we can safely say that for the first time since maybe 2012, 2013, he's going to be in really good equipment with Stewart-Haas Racing. The one thing I am hoping is that he's not going to be kind of the second fiddle of Stewart-Haas Racing, where they give all the good equipment to Kevin Harvick and Kurt Busch and give the not so good equipment to Tony Stewart and Danica Patrick, because that tends to happen with 4-car race teams. Is, there's 2 drivers that get the really good equipment, and the other 2 drivers have to try and fight their way through with whatever they've got. Personally, looking at what's happened in the past and looking towards the future, I think Clint Bowyer is going to have a decent season in 2017. I think it will get off to a bit of a rocky start. He's got a lot that he's going to have to relearn. He's going to have to get used to driving a Ford. He's going to have to get used to a new team. And while it kind of seems silly to say this, he's going to have to get used to driving a competitive race car again. I think Daytona will be a key factor into knowing how Bowyer might do for the remainder of the season, because like I stated, a lot of his finishes at Daytona have been good. Some of his finishes haven't been so good. But it always seems like Daytona can be a place that you use as a bit of a springboard to know whether he's going to do well or not. Like I said, he had the 2 best years, in my opinion, with Michael Waltrip Racing back in 2012, 2013. He finished 11th in both of those seasons in the Daytona 500. See, he finished back-to-back 4th place finishes in 2009, 2010 with Richard Childress Racing. Let me see where he actually finished in the point standings with those 2. 2009, 2010, he was 15th and 10th in the point standings. So yeah, if you take the Daytona 500 how he does, I think you can maybe draw a little bit of a diagram, a little bit of a parallel of thinking, yeah, okay, he's used to the equipment, he's figured it out. We're more than likely going to see something out of him. So places that we can look at to see if he is kind of up to par. Here's some of the places that he finished really well in with HCOT Motorsports last season. 18th place at California, 8th at Bristol, 12th place at Dover, 18th at Pocono, that's not too shabby, 18th at Watkins Glen, 17th at Charlotte, and as I mentioned, Talladega in 18th place. Clint Bowyer, for the most part, as I look here down the list, he pretty much managed to finish that car somewhere in the mid to high 20s. So with that being said, if we can see Clint Bowyer get off to a start of maybe finishing in the top 15 every week, for maybe the first 3 or 4 races, I think you're going to see a really good year out of Clint Bowyer. I think that he's going to be on a learning curve just as much as his teammate Kevin Harvick is going to be. But, kind of interesting too, we're going to be seeing former teammates getting back together. Clint Bowyer and Kevin Harvick both drove for Richard Childress Racing back in the day when Harvick drove the 29, Bowyer drove either the 33 or the 07. So that'll be very interesting to see that as well. But I do think we're going to see the Clint Bowyer of old come back. He's going to be in better equipment, and I think Clint Bowyer is going to do pretty well. So we're going to be covering some other stuff in the next segment, and more than likely the next segment we're going to have some guests on as well. And we're going to be talking about looking towards the Daytona 500 based off of last year's Daytona 500, if we're going to see anything different for 2017, and who can the possible sleepers be. So thanks for tuning into this segment. Hope to see you guys in the next segment of NASCAR Talk Hot Stove.